Jesse Pinkman was arguably the most normal person involved in drug business in the Breaking Bad franchise. From his empathy for Bugs to his guilt for Gale, Jesse had the strongest emotions by far. But aside from his character, he didn't have much going for him as he barely got through high school and was cooking meth to carry day-to-day life. Despite this, Walter White, who saw potential in Jesse, would take him in as a partner and scale him up from a garage to super labs run by kingpins like Gus as well as the cartel. So, through this sketchy journey, how much money did Jesse Pinkman make? Or actually, how much did Walter White make for Jesse? Well, starting off with their first batch, we know from Jesse giving Walter his share of $4,000 in Walter's backyard that Jesse also made $4,000 from the first batch. By their second batch, they already transitioned into doing business with Tuco. Though Tuco would steal this batch from Jesse and beat him up afterwards, Walter would go in soon after with some fulminated mercury and demand that he gets $50K, $35K for the product, and $15K for Jesse's pain and suffering. Furthermore, instead of splitting this amount in half with each of them getting $25K, Walter would actually give Jesse the $17,500 from the batch plus a total extra $15,000, giving Jesse a total of $32,500. Before Walter left Tuco's place of business with the $50K, he tells Tuco that he can get him another 2 pounds the following week. But this doesn't actually materialize and they only end up making 0.53 pounds. Despite this, Walter is able to negotiate with Tuco and get him to give them the total $70K as a capital investment in returns for 2 pounds the next week. But after stealing methylamine from the nearby chemical factory, Walter and Jesse are actually able to make 4.6 pounds or 2.6 pounds more than what they owed Tuco, leading to another $91,000 in revenue. But that would be the last time they make a deal with Tuco. So, from the first stage of their little business, Jesse would pull in $117,000. Of course, basically all of that was spent or lost, but that is Jesse's total income so far. After this fiasco with Tuco, since Jesse lost all his money, he would demand that Walter give him half of his share as their 50-50 partners. Though Walter resists at first and does keep the majority, Walter does end up giving him 4 wads of cash. Assuming that each of them is $10,000 wads, this gives Jesse another 40 grand. As for Jesse and Walter's first solo venture, Jesse gets his friends to move the product and they pay him 2 grand per ounce. In the first round of doing this, Jesse is able to pull in 15 grand for each of them. It should have actually been 16, but as Skinny Pete was robbed, he'd only get 15. To teach the robbers a lesson, Walter would tell Jesse to track down the robbers and get the money back. The situation would play out nothing like Jesse expected, but in the end, from the $4,660 he gives Walter, we know that Jesse was able to get that much as well. After this ATM incident, Walter does a deal with Jesse's friends, and assuming that this is the same 1 pound as before, this would bring in another 16 grand for each of them. Later on, Walter and Jesse would cook for 4 days in the RV when they would get stuck. During this time, they would get 19 bags of product at a median weight of 2.2 pounds, meaning that they had a total of 41.8 pounds of product. Unfortunately for them, right when they start selling this product, Combo would be killed, putting their operation at a standstill until they meet Gus Fring. Now, we know that they sold 38 pounds to Gus for $1.2 million, which means that they sold/lost about 3.8 pounds before this deal. Assuming that 0.8 pounds was lost with Combo, Walter and Jesse would have pulled in $132,000 before the deal with Gus, allowing for $66,000 each. And as for the deal with Gus, this brings in $1.2 million, but as Saul gets $240,000, this leaves $480,000 each for Jesse and Walter. This adds up to $621,660 for Jesse in the second stage of their business. As for the third stage of their business, this is when they start working for Gus. However, before this happens, Jesse decides to cook up 1 batch without Walter, and Gus actually buys this batch to try to get Walter to re-enter the business. We don't know how much Jesse cooked or how much Gus paid him, but from the cash that Victor throws into Walter's car, we can see that it is at least 7 wads of $5,000 or at least $35,000. This means that Jesse would have gotten $28,800 from this transaction after accounting for Saul's fees. But as Jesse was the one who cooked it, Walter would also give Jesse his $35,000 share. And it doesn't seem like Saul gets a cut out of this portion. So before Gus in season 3, Jesse is able to pull in $63,800. After this, Jesse tries to continue on a solo adventure after Walt abandons him, but he has trouble convincing his friends to start selling again. In the meantime, Hank finds out about the RV they've been cooking in, which leads to a huge situation. But in the end, Jesse joins Walter in the super lab with compensation of $1.5 million over 3 months. But lucky for Jesse, this only works out for about one batch, before Walter is able to negotiate up to $15 million a year, or about $625,000 per month for each of them. Given that this arrangement lasts for about 4 months, this gives Jesse $2.5 million. Saul's cut from Jesse is still 17%, so Jesse would end up getting about $2.075 million from this lucrative job. But since it does start out lower, we'll just call it $2 million. Aside from this, Jesse also tries to steal some pride from Gus and sell it on his own. But this doesn't work out too well and can be considered a negligible amount. As a result, in season 3 and season 4, Jesse is able to pull in a total of $2.063 million. And finally, that leaves us with the money from the Jesse, Mike, and Walter partnership. Funny enough, though this was the most complex cook, this was the easiest to calculate. They cook one batch before Jesse and Mike sell the methylamine, leaving Jesse with $137,000. And of course, he sells the methylamine for $5 million, meaning $5.137 million in season 5. Adding these all together, we get a total of $7.939 million, or right about $7.5 to $8 million. Of course, Jesse ends up throwing away all of this money, spending it, or losing it, having less than $100K by the end of El Camino. Ironically though, Jesse was the one that could have gotten away with all of it by using the vacuum guy before everything went berserk. But of course, as we discussed in the beginning, Jesse's conscience simply wouldn't allow for that, and hey, that's probably for the best. Do you guys think Jesse should have run away with the money? Make sure to comment that down below. Also, if you guys appreciate the depth of this analysis, make sure to drop a like and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.